Okay, so I'll probably get angry at some point in this answer. So I just want you to know that up front, because this is like a huge frustration for me.
This episode is really special to me because if you're wanting to be able to build a business that really gives you the life you want more freedom so you can live on your terms. You want to be able to earn the money that you want, to live the lifestyle that you want. You want to be able to have the impact whilst doing the work that you love. Well, then how do you actually make that happen? How do you go from where you are today to living your dream life, to having that business and life that you love? This is what this is all about. And I'm so happy I get to share this with you because it is with someone that I truly, truly love, respect, and admire, Alex Charfen. Alex has been someone in my life and has been a mentor to me for many years now. And I'm so grateful to call him as a friend as well. But what he shares with you in this interview, in this conversation, is profound. I really, really do believe that. I'm going to stand by my words for that. And I want you to be able to stick with me throughout this episode. And I want to know what you're going to be able to take away, because I really do believe that you're going to be able to take away at least one thing from this conversation that is going to be able to move the needle, that is going to be able to move you forward into creating that business and life that you really love. And that's what I want us to be able to do right now. Alex has shared with me before something that he calls the 7-figure myth. So many entrepreneurs think that getting to the $1 million mark is going to be the thing that just solves all the problems. Cash is going to be pouring in. You're going to be living the absolute best life. And a lot of the time, and this was my experience, that is not the case. So this is something where Alex has, honestly, I think he's absolutely the world's best at being able to understand and therefore help entrepreneurs so well in being able to build themselves and their organizations and their businesses to be able to operate the way they need to.
Okay, so I'll probably get angry at some point in this answer. So I just want you to know that up front, because this is like a huge frustration for me. So first, I want to say, I think that that getting people to pursue $1 million outcome is awesome. I think it's fantastic. I think that, I call it like the 2 comma club, because that's what Russell Brunson calls it. And I think what Russell has done is incredible, because he's created this environment where $1 million businesses are a possibility. Not even a possibility. It feels totally realistic and probable. And like, I've never seen anyone mint as many $1 million businesses as he has. So I want to say that up front. But I also think that there's a challenge with it, because $1 million business is not a fun business to run. $1 million business is an excruciating business to run. And we don't share that as entrepreneurs. We don't talk about that as entrepreneurs. Because I was just recently at $1 million. So Katie and I, this business went away because the foreclosure crisis went away. I did a lot of consulting for a while. I did a lot of one-on-one work. We had some products that didn't really work out. Like, we were trying to find our way for a while, and we just put together this business in July of 17. And I had to go through that $1 million threshold. It's horrible, because here's what happens. At $1 million, you now have $1 million of responsibility, but depending on what your margins are, you only have so much you can do to get help with that responsibility. And what happens to most entrepreneurs right around $1 million is everything that they've been doing implodes and breaks. So they now need more help than they've ever needed before. And they're walking around masterminds going, well, I'm at $1 million. And so instead of saying, dude, I'm at $1 million, how do you do this? They're like, I'm at $1 million, I won. And so today we've got this environment where people are like holding out the trophy for $1 million. And I think they should be holding out the white flag and saying like, help, what do you do here? Because it's excruciating. And here's the fact, like, every time I've gotten one of the holding out the award out front, it just happened last week in California. I won't use the name, but we were in California. We were in a hotel, and there was a sign for some online marketing conference. So Katie and I are like, oh, let's go check it out. So we walk over, somebody recognizes me, and then they took me, like, they were like, oh, hey, the guy who runs this is a huge fan. Like, you should meet him. So I met him, and he's like, oh, let me show you what I'm doing. And he shows me his whole product outline and stuff. And I'm like, and he showed me what he's selling. And I pointed at him, I'm like, this is killing you, isn't it? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, this has just got to be brutal. Like, all this you're delivering, you guys are at what, 1.4? Like, how tactically crazy is your life right now? And he's like, dude, I'm dying, but like up to that second, it was, let me show you all this stuff I have. And then he's like, I'm dying, man. How do you do this? And so like, that's the conversation we should be having, is like, right at $1 million is where you actually have to step up to a level of leadership you've never been in. Because here's what happens at $1 million. it is such a massive transition. Some it happens a little bit earlier and some it happens a little bit later, but at $1 million, you have to make a hard shift from me to we. And entrepreneurs suck at that. Like, we're terrible at it. And that shift from like, I do everything to I get help, to I run everything, to I run a team, to, I talk to every customer, to I manage customer acquisition. Like, those shifts that we have to make, literally everything you did up to $1 million has to make a 100% change for you to get past it. And so $1 million is like, good start, kid. Now let's really get after it.
So this is really important because for you, you might be running a coaching or a service-based business, and specifically an online business, being able to serve people that way. So if you're stuck, if you haven't gotten to the success, to the level that you want to be able to take that to, why? Why haven't you gotten there?
I think there are we can call out the obvious. Let's get real. I think the biggest issue that we have in the coaching world is there are far too many people who are offering to get a result that they haven't achieved themselves. And people say things like, oh, well, so-and-so was never a basketball player and he was the best coach ever. Well, okay, but basketball's not business. Let's get real. There's a massive difference between basketball and business. Basketball is finite. It's a court. There's rules. It's like right here. Business, like the bigger your business gets, imagine the surface area getting bigger, and that's how much you're exposed. And so in the coaching world, I think that when the biggest issue is people don't look at the background of their coach and ask, does this background add up to these solutions? Like, has what this person done in their lives actually going to create the wisdom, the knowledge, the ability for them to tell me what I need to do? And I think that what happens, unfortunately, is there's far too many people who are exceptional at marketing and who put about 90% of the emphasis on marketing and 10% of the emphasis on delivery. If that, let's get real. There's some people, it's 1%. And I think, that's the biggest issue in coaching, is that there's far too many coaches out there that really on the back end don't desire to get their clients a result. Well, and I think, the other issue in the coaching business today, and this is like one of the reasons that I align with Taki, is because he doesn't tell people you don't have to be an expert. It was probably 15 or 20 years ago. No, it's not 15 or 20. It was probably 12 or 13 years ago. Katie and I went to a conference, like a seminar on how to become a public speaker. And I remember the guy in front of the room saying, there's 3 ways you can become a public speaker. You can be the expert, like what you're talking about, you can share it. You can be the reporter, you can go out and understand what's happening, then report it as a public speaker. Or you can be the student, where you are a student teaching your tribe as you learn. And I remember thinking like, oh, I do not want to get a speech from that guy. And today I hear people say that about coaching. They say you can be the expert, you can be the reporter, you can go learn it all, or you can just learn it with your clients and stay one step ahead of them. And when I hear things like that, it frustrates me because, for a long time, I wouldn't call myself a coach because of that. I would say, no, I'm a consultant. I'm not a coach, because that whole perspective would just drive me crazy. And I think that's where, today, that's where most challenges in coaching come. Here's where I have a hard time. Yeah. There's coaches out there who say that they can coach you on anything. Yeah. And I think that that's just weird. I think I can sit down with you. Like, if you came here and you presented with any issue in your life, I think the two of us could sit down, and by the end of our conversation, I could help you. I absolutely believe that. Yeah. I would never charge you money for that, because it feels weird. Because there's that would just be a conversation and helping. And I think there's way too many coaches out there who say, like, I help people do mindset. And it's like, well, what do you mean? What people? How? What mindset? Around what? Like, if there's not a level of expertise there, if there's not a niche, if there's not something that you're actually addressing for a specific type of person, then it's very, to me, that's where coaching gets into this weird, I just do stuff and I get on the phone with people and I solve problems, and that makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
Now, something that comes up a lot of the time that you've probably seen tons on social media, on YouTube videos, on podcasts, a lot of people are talking about mindset. But what really is mindset, and what is it that we actually need to be doing so that we can have the mindset to get us to where we want to go?
So this is something I struggle with. I struggle with people who get up and say, I coach on mindset. And when I say, who do you coach? Anybody who needs help with mindset? I don't understand it. I don't understand what they mean by mindset coaching. To me, here's what mindset coaching is. I tell our clients through video and through events the feelings they're going to have in advance So when they're confronted with them, they're prepared and they can address them in a way that's better than they would if they were not prepared. And I think when people go out and say, I have this general mindset thing that I do, I don't understand like how you can give me general mindset for anything in life. Like maybe you can, but I think for me, mindset coaching is when a person's been through a specific issue or challenge and you have similarities with that person and they can help you understand what's going to happen in advance.
Now, I've said earlier in this conversation that Alex is one of the world's best of being able to understand, like really understand entrepreneurs. And this is where I wanted to actually ask him something very direct that I think is really profound for you and I to take on board. And it is, what are the similarities about the entrepreneurs that win, that are the most successful?
I've studied success since I was a little kid because I always thought I was like screwed up. And so instead, and I tried to read personal development books when I was a kid, but man, they started conflicting and like my young, super logical mind could not take all the conflict. And so I started reading autobiographies. There's no conflict in life histories, right? It's just like getting more data about people. And so I studied like crazy, like what did successful people do? And then as I was older, when I got into business, I got this crazy opportunity. Like, when I saw Forrest Gump, I was like, is this extraordinary? Because this is kind of how my life is. And so, like I related a lot to that movie because when I was a consultant, I ended up in the room with like billionaires. I had friends that had created $100 million, $500 million, $1 billion companies. I'd like hung out with people who were worth billions. So I got to observe up close and personal how they thought and what they did and how they were in different situations. And the people who have all been successful, I believe, have followed the exact same process. And like, I simplify everything to the point where I can coach it. And when I looked at every autobiography, when I looked at the stuff I was seeing up front and like up close and personal, when I look at like even theology, it's the same answer. And I like brought it down to one equation. Here's what I think that every entrepreneurial personality type in history who's hit it out of the park has done. I call it the contribution equation, and I feel like it's the secret of life for people like us. I've already shared part of it. So the first step, it's 4 steps. The first step of the contribution equation is to lower the pressure and noise in your life. When you look at people like us, when there is low pressure and noise, when we're connected, when we're aware, when we're present, we are literally magical. Like we do things that change the world. Tyler Perry, who like no one even knows in Hollywood who he is, has opened a studio that's bigger than the studios in Hollywood in Atlanta just because he decided he was going to do it. Like magical. Like that's incredible that a Black American is opening a studio where I read an article where he said he walks on the set some days and it's all Black people. And in Hollywood, sometimes there wasn't a Black person. Like that's magic. That's incredible. It's great. Like he is going to change the entertainment industry in the United States and nobody's even paying attention to him. That's lowering pressure and noise. When the second step of the contribution equation is to increase protection and support. And this is hard. This is getting real about what you need. It's getting real about what help you need. And it's dropping the veneer and saying like, hey, this is what's really going on. And I think that in today's environment, that's incredibly hard to do because like I said, the guy at the table with $1 million business is the winner. So he can't ask for help. And so we are in this place where we don't ask for protection and support. And the fact is that entrepreneurial personality types need far more help than the average person to do what we want to do what you were born wanting to do. But anytime we ask for help or support, it leaves us feeling vulnerable and exposed. And so we have to learn how to do it. And it only works for people like us in process. Like if we have a process around how we lower the noise in our life and increase the help we're getting and increase the protection and support, things get naturally easier for people like us. And the third step is if you lower the pressure and noise, and I mean relentlessly, physiologically, get rid of the people, places, and things in your life, start working out, start hydrating, like keep yourself present and aware. And you increase protection and support by getting the help you need, by admitting what's really going on, by being real with people, by being who you are. Here's this magic that happens. Your strengths and abilities will show up. They just appear. And Chris, I get like a little emotional about this because like you read the life history of people like Helen Keller and it's just real, man. She changed the world. When she was born without being able to speak, hear, or see, babies like that were usually put in a Burlap sack and thrown in a lake. And she not only survived, but went on to change the entire world. Like that is magic. People like us can achieve magic if we allow it to happen. We lower the pressure noise, increase protection and support. Our strengths and abilities will show up in a way we've never felt them before. You will become more powerful as you do this. And if you do those three things, you can go out and make your greatest contribution. And I use the word contribution, and sometimes people think like I'm talking about starting charities. Nothing could be further from the truth. You know, I think that a well-run business where you create a profit and you build a team and you affect people's lives and you make a change in the world is one of the most valuable and spiritual journeys anyone can commit to in a lifetime. And so when I say make a contribution, what I mean is go out, build a business, build an empire, grow it like crazy, change the world, and prove that you've actually done what you were meant to do on this planet.
So this has been a profound conversation thus far, and this is why I want him to be able to share with yourself and myself, what does he actually want you to do from right now? What is it that we're going to roll up our sleeves and be able to actually implement, to be able to action from right now so that we can get to the success, so that we can create what it is that we want? And I'd love for you to comment below and for you to be able to say, what is that one thing? Let's actually grab our cojones. Let's actually give ourselves the accountability right now. What's the one thing that you're going to commit to from being able to use the amazing wisdom that Alex is sharing with us right now?
You know, if there's one thought that I want every entrepreneur to meditate on and to think about and to understand is that there is nothing wrong with you and you are not alone. And I know I get challenged on that constantly. But here's what I mean by that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what somebody said. And it doesn't matter how somebody's made you feel. And it doesn't matter what you were born with, what you look like, or what you struggle with. You can change the world. Recently, a friend of mine passed away. His name was Sean Stevenson. And he was born with a disease called osteosis imperfecta. And his bones, when he was young, were so brittle that when he would sneeze, they would break. And if he fell or bumped something, he would have a fracture, and there was nothing they could do. They couldn't splint or cast because it was just going to happen again. And he was supposed to die as a kid. And the last time I saw him speak, he was very fond of sharing that when he was a child, the doctors who treated him all told him that he would die. And today they're all dead. And he wasn't. And Sean was only 2'6" and couldn't use his legs and had limited use of his arms and still was one of the most incredible human beings on the planet. And one day he picked up Post-it notes and wrote a message to the world and sat in front of a camera and held up the Post-it notes and shared it with people. And over 200 million people watched. He just held up Post-it notes. So it doesn't matter who you are and what's happened, or where you've been and what someone said. One of us has gone on to change the world and overcome it and done what we were meant to do. And it means you can too.
So one of the biggest obstacles, one of the biggest things that could be stopping you from really creating the business and life that you really love is these certain roadblocks. And that roadblock definitely can be our belief systems, how we are actually showing up in the world because of what we believe deep down. So what does that really mean? But more importantly, how is it that we actually go about to being able to transform those belief systems so that we become the people that we need to be to create the success that we want?
I think that the biggest challenge for every entrepreneur I've ever worked with is that in some way, they believe they're not enough. And they believe they're not worthy, or they're not capable, or that they can't, or that there's something different about them that makes them specifically challenged or unable or broken. And the fact is that every single person out in the world has that exact same thing. And so we're all like that. Everyone's dealing with something, everybody's struggling with something, everyone's trying to get past something. And the fact is that when you commit to something, when you make it what you want to do, when you decide to do things for the right reason, when you go after actually helping people and making a difference, and you just move forward, the right things are going to start to show up. When you're pursuing the right outcome, the energy will be there, and you will be able to do this. And will there be hard times? Excruciating. You're an entrepreneurial personality type. I'm sorry, it's not going to be easy for you. You could go collect tolls, but you can't, right? And so you have to do this, and you're not going to stop. The fantasy of quitting is literally a fantasy for people like us, and we have it all the time. We get to the place where we say, like, I want to go back to doing it all myself, or I want to get rid of my team, or if I just didn't have any clients. And it's like, it's a passing thought, because here's the reality. You need to get past the feeling of not being enough, because you can't turn it off, and you never will. You're going to do this. You're meant to do this. The world needs you to do this. And so understand that there is no switch that's going to make it okay. And it's never going to get to the place where you can just be complacent sitting still. So cast off the doubts, stop beating yourself up, figure out what you want to do, go out and ask for help, move forward, and get it done.
Now, I've got to be perfectly honest. I've had the conundrum, I've had the problem before where it comes up of, well, what should we be focusing on? Should we be focusing and going after money? Or is there something more spiritual, more wholesome? Or is it something that could actually be detrimental if we're only focusing on the money? And I see this play out in so many different cases with so many entrepreneurs and with myself that Alex really solves the problem here.
So, in a lot of ways, Chris, I think you should chase money. I actually think it's a very healthy pursuit. I think there's far too many entrepreneurs, especially ones who are contribution based, who get so caught up in making a contribution that they forget they need to make a living and actually prove they provided value. And so, I think that chasing money and going after actually creating revenue and bringing in money and building a team and building an infrastructure and building an organization that will survive whether you're there or not for months or weeks. I think all of those things require chasing money. But if you're chasing money because you think it's going to give you some type of a feeling, or it's going to change who you are, or it's going to make the world a better place for you, there is a reality to the fact that having money makes things easier. But if it's your only outcome, it is hollow and painful, and it will feel like a brick wall when you hit it. I was there. I hit it. In my 30s, I pursued money to the detriment, not 30s, 20s, to the detriment of just about everything else. In my early 20s, in my late teens, I did some body modeling and some runway work. And so I was in exceptional shape. And in my early 20s, I continued to work out. Then I started building a business. It got way bigger. I started opening offices, and it was like everything else. I was going to pursue the biggest paycheck I possibly could. I was going for a massive number. I had a business we were responsible for about 100 million in sales. I wanted to see if I could get it to $250 million, then $500 million. And what could I do? And I almost died. No joke. Reality, I almost died. I was 300 pounds. I was you wouldn't recognize me. I was 300 pounds. I had a 44-inch waist, and it was barely fitting. I was on 5 different prescription drugs. I had trouble going upstairs and doing normal things. I was working harder than I've never worked as hard as I did right then, because everything hurt, everything was hard, everything was swollen, the concentration was completely gone, and it was in pursuit of this massive outcome. And I don't share this often, but when I met Katie, there was this wake up call, holy crap, there's something else here. It's not just money. There's a lot more to pursue here. And it kind of changed my focus dramatically, to the point where just after a few months of us living together, I didn't want that business anymore. And I could have taken, 2 or 3 years and done what it takes to go get a big, huge paycheck. And I was in a place where I was so burned out and so unhealthy and so convinced that I just didn't want to do it anymore. I just took whatever the fire sale price was. It was enough that I didn't have to work for a long time. But my whole life, I had pursued this massive outcome, and then it was right there, and I walked away from it. And there's things in my business career where I look back and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I did it differently. I've never for 1 second doubted that decision.
Now, I don't know about you, but I know plenty of other entrepreneurs that I've spoken to, and this is for myself, that a lot of the times I felt broken. I felt like a misfit. I felt like I just didn't have it together. A bit of a black sheep, a bit of a square peg trying to fit through a round hole, whatever analogy you want to be able to use. You just don't feel like you're exactly the way that you think that you're supposed to be, especially when it comes to you wanting to be entrepreneurial. And this is where Alex has such a profound understanding. And so this is going to make you feel better.
Yeah, here's the challenge. When people feel like they don't fit in, what we try and do is conform, and we try and be like the people around us, and we try and lean into the system that's already rejecting us, and that never works out. You know, I often share with people that the second I gave up caring what other people thought, it was like a switch where everybody listened to what I said. It was the weirdest thing. Like when I was all concerned with how to fit in and how to be like everyone else, and how to have the same things or how to look the same way, it was incredibly frustrating, and I wasn't very good at it. But the more I leaned into exactly who I wanted to be, the easier things got. And this took I don't want to sound like I had this figured out. It took a lifetime. And I think really only in the past few years have I really fully accepted what that means. For years, I did everything I could to conform. And I realized that any attempt to be anything other than yourself only increases the pressure and noise in your life. And for people like us, when noise goes up, we look defective. And so my advice for anyone who feels like a square peg in a round hole is lean into that feeling, not the feeling of conformity and not the feeling of like being everyone else. Like, ask yourself, what makes you different, and what do you need to make different around you? Like, one of the things that's prominently different about me is I often wear these glasses because I'm really light sensitive, and light wears me out. It actually makes me tired. I have a lot more, gas in the tank at the end of the day. And people have asked me, why do you wear those during the day? Like, why are you wearing sunglasses inside? At this point, I don't care, Chris. I'm at the point where who cares? Well, here's what's funny is, I go to events now, and there's people who are in the audience. I look out and there's all these orange glasses. And when I'm done speaking, they all walk up to talk to me. So I do weird stuff now, and people copy it. And so if you feel like a square peg in a round hole, here's what it really means. No one average ever did anything extraordinary. And so if you feel like a square peg in a round hole, it's a calling. That is confirmation that crazy thing in the back of your mind, that whisper that says you are meant for more, you're meant to be more, you're meant to do more, you can be more. It's the realest thing in the world. And I think far too many people like us deny that voice because the outside voices are telling us that it's crazy. But the fact is, it's the most real and rational part of who we are. If you're watching this video, you're not like everybody else because you figured out how to get to this. And this isn't mainstream, and this isn't certainly what everybody is watching. So you're different, and you know it. And here's the reality. Is that every person who's ever been different has been convinced that they are broken and there's something wrong with them. And society at large tries like crazy to tell people like us that there is something wrong with us. And heaven forbid there's actually something wrong with you, because then they'll come after you like crazy. But the fact is, if you examine all of history, here's the equation that we are screwing up today. The person who doesn't look like everyone else, talk like everyone else, walk like everyone else, and show up like everyone else is the person who has always changed the world. Edison was kicked out of school. Helen Keller couldn't talk. She couldn't see, she couldn't hear. Rosa Parks was a black woman getting on a bus. Like, come on. So it doesn't matter what you're going through and what you're feeling and what diagnosis they have given you or what disease they've told you you've had. One of us has had it, gone on to change the world, and so can you. And the fact is, there is nothing wrong with you, and you are not alone. And if you've felt different your entire life, it is exactly that is proof you are meant to change the world.
So this is important. There's most likely going to be you right now, and there's going to be this gap between where it is that you want to be able to go. So why is it that a smart, ambitious entrepreneur such as yourself hasn't been able to bridge that gap yet?
I think that I don't know about other people. I don't understand other people, Chris. So I don't really ever want to answer for people other than entrepreneurs. And I don't ever want to share a theory that doesn't just exclusively include entrepreneurs and people who feel different. And I'll expand that definition. I look at it as the entrepreneurial personality type, as people who are different and they're driven differently and they feel different about the world. In my observation, of coaching entrepreneurs and people in very high level positions for over 30 years. That's not true. It's not over 30 years. I've been running businesses for over 30 years. I've been coaching for over 25. And I think most people don't achieve what they want to achieve because of self-inflicted pressure and noise. And I think that we allow way too much of what takes momentum away from us into our lives. I think people like you and I are hardwired differently than the rest of the world. I don't think we experience the world like the rest of the world does. Let me share with you what I mean by that. See, I don't think you and I really understand happy and sad. Here's the fact, we've figured it out. Happy's on, sad's off. But what's the difference between sad, frustrated, pissed off, ticked off, confused, and just plain angry? Is there a difference? No, because for people like you and I, here's what really matters. We don't experience emotions like the rest of the world. We experience one thing, momentum. That's it. It is who we are. When we are in momentum, I go out and I speak and I say, what does it feel like? And when I'm in a room of entrepreneurs, they say things like, it feels like ecstasy. It feels incredible. It feels unstoppable. It feels unbelievable. I feel like a superhero. And then somebody finally said, it feels like I'm alive. And the fact is that for people like us, that feeling of forward progress, of moving things in the right direction, of having the world follow in your wake, of achieving, of changing the world and making it better, that is what we live for. And if we understand that, that is what we should protect. And we should do everything we can to make certain that we are in that state. And here's the challenge. That's the first state we exist in. The second one, now this is weird. The second one is, I call it facing resistance. It's when the cards are stacked against you, when you don't have the right resources, when the world conspires against you. Let's get real. You probably conspired against yourself when doesn't look good, but you can see a tiny little light at the end of the tunnel, barely perceptible. And everybody in your life is like, if you see a light, it's a train in a tunnel, get the hell out. But you pursue the light and you compel it towards you and yourself towards it, and you finally step through it, and you go from facing resistance to becoming exactly the person you're meant to be. See, we're weird. When we face resistance, we create momentum. There's only one thing that breaks people like us down. It's when the pressure and noise in our lives gets high enough that the light at the end of the tunnel goes out and we can't see it. And we don't know where we're going. And we don't know what our destination is. And we don't know what our pursuit is. And when the light goes out, we go into a place called constraint. And for people like us, for the entrepreneurial personality type, when we are in constraint, immediately our physiology breaks down. We start feeling strained and tired and fatigued. And you see it in, every time I have one of our clients run a blood test and they share it with us, you see it in the results. It's adrenal fatigue, and it's all the hormones all over the place, and it's body fatigue. And then the second place we feel constraint is not just physiologically, but we actually feel it psychologically, cognitively, when we get into a place where we can't see the future, when the pressure and noise is too high, when tactically everything's overwhelming, we cognitively get to a place where we can't make decisions. And that ability we have to see the future and connect the dots and see the unique connections becomes overwhelming to where we really, literally don't know what to do next. And here's the big one. When the pressure and noise gets high enough, and we don't actively turn it down, we become chemically affected. And when you're affected by the chemical effect of constraint, we become symptomatic. And when we're symptomatic and we get in front of the wrong person at the wrong time, at the wrong, place, doesn't matter what age you are, you're going to hear things like autistic and Asperger's and ADD and ADHD and bipolar and microaggressions and depressed and chronic depression and all kinds of other labels made up to describe entrepreneur personality type in constraint. And so for people like us, the key to living the life you want, to getting everything you want, the secret to life for us is to lower the pressure and noise in your life. Relentlessly and consistently, the people, the places, the things in your life that are taking your momentum away, you need to get rid of them, because that's the fact. It's binary. Either it's giving you momentum or it's taking it away. Be relentless. Go through your life and make a list of everything that's causing noise and get it out of your life. Because here's the reality. There's two ways to create momentum. You can do everything it takes to get a boat up out of the water in hydroplaning, which takes a tremendous amount of energy, or you can just drop all the ballast and it'll pop out of the water a hell of a lot easier. And for people like us, if you're not in the place in life you want, if you don't have what you want in your life, the fastest way to get there is to first, before you do anything proactively, go lower the noise in your life.
Now, I believe that we all really do things because we want to feel something, where we eat because we feel hungry and we want to feel satisfied. We want to be able to earn money so that we have safety and power and social signaling and all of that other stuff. But really, I want to know, what does success feel like for Alex?
I think I would have answered this question differently at different points in my life, completely differently. I think when I was younger, it would have been about financial stuff and about having things. But I've had things for a long time, and I've had finances for a long time. In fact, I've had them, lost them, got them back. So I know what like all that contrast feels like. And I've gone from $100,000 months to not been able to pay the bills to back to $100,000 months. And so, you start realizing that like that is transient, and money's energy, and it'll come and go. And like, I don't know, finances are definitely important to success, massively important. But I think that money really is energy. And the more you're, the whole Napoleon Hill thing, like the more people you help, you'll get everything you really want. I think it's even really more than that. Like for me, success actually feels like when I go to one of our events and I see our clients succeeding, or when we pass around the microphone at the beginning and everybody's talking about the growth in the businesses. And I'm standing there in the room thinking, we've got 50 businesses represented and 46 we're growing. Like that doesn't happen anywhere, nowhere. And I start seeing the changes that our clients are making in the world, and like, and what they're able to do and what they're able to create. And that, to me, that feels like just incredible success. And, when I was younger, routine and schedules and calendars, like they are all kryptonite for me. They feel like I open a calendar and I can't help it. I get heart palpitations involuntarily every time. Like it literally gives me a physiological effect. And today we have a company where we help entrepreneurs overcome the challenges with calendars, the challenges with routines, with schedules, with being in endless meetings. And we help them grow massive organizations that go out and change people's lives. And I mean, like when I talk about that, that's when I get goosebumps. I think of the businesses that have gone from like millions to tens of millions, and the people who never thought they could have a business over $500,000, and now they're running a multi-million-dollar company. And I mean, Chris, we have people in their early 20s running $1, $3, $5 million businesses. And it's like, I get giddy. I mean, I think my whole life, I had this, when I was young, I had this feeling like I wanted to help people. I really had this deep desire to help people, but it was so hard to reconcile because in general, people were not a positive reflection for me. It was like I wanted to help, but I didn't understand how I would ever be able to. And today, being able to help people like me overcome the same challenges that I had so that they can have success that I wanted earlier than I had it, I get like emotional talking about it. It's like the coolest thing in the world. Well, and when you look at it as a coaching business, you really should have two metrics. You should have a metric of, are we successful, and a metric, are our clients successful? We track this like crazy. We're obsessed with it.
Now, it's pretty inevitable that we're going to have hard times, that things are going to come up that we don't want them to, and it doesn't feel good. So what is it that we need to do when those hard times come up? How do we actually get through those lows so that we can continue on with that journey? I think this is really important.
I think, emotionally, the lowest low I've ever felt has definitely been the loss of my mom. But in life, it was definitely the bankruptcy. It was, Katie and I, when we met, I owned a consultancy that I sold. I got some money out of that. We started a real estate business. We invested everything in real estate. We worked in real estate. We had a huge portfolio, several different real estate companies. And when the market crashed in the US, the three counties that we owned property in, Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach County, were considered ground zero for the market collapse. So we felt the collapse a year before everybody else. So we were bankrupt in 2007. The market calls it the 2008 collapse. But in Florida, it fell off the cliff in 2007. And it was excruciating. We went we could see what was happening because we understood our numbers, and it was like, man, there's no way out of this. And having to walk into an attorney's office and have the conversation. I remember we had the conversation. We showed him everything. We laid everything out. He walked out of the office. He came back in. I'm trying not to get emotional. And I remember he said, this is going to be weird, one of the weirdest bankruptcies we've ever processed. And I remember saying, like, what is he talking about? And I heard bankruptcy, and I'm like, man, it's real. You know, we're really doing this. And he started telling us like how the credit scores were good and we hadn't missed any payments. And normally people are like a complete train wreck. Like, why did we come in? And I was like, well, we knew our numbers. We know we have 60 days. Like, we figured you have 60 days, you better figure something out. And so we went through the process. It was brutal. And Katie made us every night tell each other 3 things we were grateful for. And Chris, there were days where I was like, I'm grateful for like nothing. I'm pissed and I'm angry and I don't want to talk about this. But every night she like made me do it. Even if I said like, I'm grateful for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she's like, okay, but tomorrow's got to be better. You know, like, just leave me alone. And we noticed when we were going through the bankruptcy, we were losing all of these properties to foreclosure because people weren't paying rents. We'd had 2 hurricanes. The market was collapsing. And I started looking at the foreclosure paperwork, and it was overwhelming for what consumers were getting. And I told Katie, like, I think this is going to cause a huge issue with foreclosures. And I started research. We had already had a real estate business. So I started research, and we had already worked with people in foreclosure, but I started researching foreclosure policies and how does this really work and what's really going on. And then I started looking at mortgage numbers. And within a week, I was convinced the market was going to tank for like 10 years. And so I started saying that. By the way, I'm going bankrupt, losing a real estate company, and going out and saying, hey, I know what's going on, right? And so I got criticized by everybody. They said I was crazy. I was called Chicken Little, all kinds of stuff, because I had enough of a reputation in real estate I could get attention. But it was like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi, and Chase all said I was wrong in 2008. 2009 when 2008 we introduced our product. 2009 we started really selling it in volume. By 2010, all of those companies were partners of ours because we wrote a product to show real estate agents how to solve the foreclosure crisis. And all of the predictions, everything I put out was absolutely right. And that was the company that we took to the Inc. 500. So that's how we got out of it. So in the middle of bankruptcy, Katie and I started a business to help real estate agents understand how to help people in foreclosure. And from the date our bankruptcy was discharged to 1 year later, we were liquid millionaires. So, and we had the $1 million day in that time. And like, it was crazy, Chris. Like, I was invited to go to Washington and sit down with like Director Lockhart, the guy who met directly with President Obama about the foreclosure crisis. Like, I was advising them directly. We wrote white papers for the White House, like 4 people in the White House, where they took copy and paste paragraphs and made it policy. Like, it was crazy what we achieved with this little tiny, the team never got bigger than 100 people. And at the very highest, we were 13 point something million. But here's the irony. In 2013, the director of the US Treasury came to our office to do a broadcast. We had set up a huge studio and we did broadcasts to the real estate industry, and our office would get like 20 to 30,000 realtors on the line every time we did a broadcast. And so I had Lori Maggiano in a broadcast, and 20 to 30,000 connections, but some of them were to offices. So we knew we were reaching probably like maybe 35 or 40,000 realtors. And we were talking, and she said, you know, we've looked at some recent numbers, and in just the past few months, we realized that the work your organization has done has pulled forward the recovery of the foreclosure crisis by 5 to 7 years. The number of people that we helped, like numerically, mathematically, when we looked at it with the US Treasury, was somewhere around 6 million. Like 6 million homes didn't go into foreclosure because there was somebody that we trained there. So it was massive what had happened. But as she said it, I remember thinking like, that means this business isn't going to work anymore. So it was pretty intense. So yeah. Yeah, it was really funny. Hi, I'm Alex Charfen, and my team and I help the entrepreneurial personality types in the world grow businesses and go out and make a difference.
So I'm sure that you can see why I love, respect, and admire Alex Charfen just so much. What an incredible man. What an incredible human being. And I'm just so grateful for him sharing everything that he did in this conversation. And if you have enjoyed this conversation, I would love to hear from you. If you're joining us on YouTube, please comment below. Please do let me know what's the one thing that you're going to action on this episode and be able to really make sure that you're taking the steps forward to where it is that you want to be able to go. If you're joining us on the podcast, and please leave us a review. Let me know what you've gotten from this show, what you've gotten from this episode, so that I can become a part of the conversation, so that I can best serve you moving forward. Because I've got to be honest, I really appreciate that you're here, that you're joining us, and I want to best be able to serve you. And the best way that I can serve you is by you letting me know what it is that you really want. What is it that you're getting most out of from this show and from these episodes? So please make sure that you do leave a review. And if you haven't, please subscribe, because it would be a bummer if you missed out on the amazing upcoming conversations and episodes. So thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate being able to have the time and to be able to put this forward, and me really learning and just documenting my journey on figuring this life out, and for me to hopefully lay some breadcrumbs down, to hopefully lay out a bit of a map, to hopefully lay out something that is going to help you fast track you to living the best life that you want to be able to. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to having you in the next episode.